Thanks for joining us today. We're going to talk about rapid data modeling and testing, and in particular how it relates to Couchbase. Like Laura said, my name is Aaron Benton. I work for shop.com in Market America. I'm a Couchbase community expert. This is a community run by Laura, their Experts and Champions program. There's a bit.ly link on there you can go to find out more about that. Get in touch with her. There's actually Dave Starling, I think, who's speaking next. It's also, yep, there's Dave. Speaking next to Couchbase expert, and then a boss is speaking later today from rental cars, is a Couchbase champion as well. So definitely find us. More than happy to talk anything about Couchbase or beer, I think too, right? Yeah. All right. So I work for Market America, shop.com. We're an online e-commerce company. We've been using Couchbase now for about 4 years. We use both Couchbase Server and Couchbase Mobile. Some of our use cases, obviously mobile. That was our first initial use case with Couchbase, being able to get data down to devices without having to rely on, our IT departments to create, or expose APIs and things like that. We are switching over to Terracotta, or switching from Terracotta to Couchbase for all of our caching. We use it for other things like tracking, user tracking, device fingerprinting, fraud identification, things like that, media, short URLs, session management, all kinds of other different things. But what we want to talk about is when you choose NoSQL or choose Couchbase, like any technology, this introduces a new set of problems that you overcome. And in particular, how do you represent your data? Right? How do you communicate what your models are, what they mean? Right? How do you document what these models are? How do you define data types? And so John Johnson said, first solve the problem and then write the code. Data is a problem, no matter what our database is. Whether it's some SQL database or Couchbase, data is a problem that we need to solve. And so when you start development, you need to model your data, right? We have the different phases of data modeling: conceptual, logical, physical. Data modeling that you should be going through no matter where you're storing your data, because logical and conceptual data modeling don't have anything to do with your technology, your database, right? It's just how we're defining entities, relationships, and attributes. So with conceptual, in a basic e-commerce, we have users, can have orders. Orders can have line items, and line items are related to products, right? All we're identifying is entities and the relationships within a given domain, right? Everyone's going through this and doing this today, right? When you're using Couchbase? Few. I see a couple nods. Nobody really wants to raise their hand. All right. We have different notations that we can use: chin, crow's foot, etc. Data modeling is a very important aspect of it, of development. You don't want to get 3/4 of the way through your project and then realize you didn't see a relationship or another way that you could potentially model your data. With logical data modeling, we're identifying our entity names, our relationships again, but we're identifying attributes, right? We're not putting data types or anything on here. And most of you have probably, if you've done data modeling, especially in a relational world, you've looked at something like this, right? You've defined out all of your tables, you have your varchars and your integers and all of your relationships. And as developers or even project managers or just part of documentation, this gives you good insight into what you're going to be building, right? What those relationships are. But with NoSQL, how do we represent these relationships, right? What tools do you use today? How do you show what these relationships are between arbitrary, unrelated JSON documents? I've heard that the code defines the model, right? You're using a class to represent a document. Or what key patterns do you use, and how do you communicate these things, right? NoSQL is still very, very new in its infancy. And while it is very powerful and is growing, the tools alongside it are also growing and are becoming available. When we first chose Couchbase, we started basically by just creating sample JSON documents and storing these as part of our projects or putting them in our wikis to document okay, this is a sample of what we're going to be storing, right? And this worked, but there's no context, right? There's no description, no rules about what we're enforcing. And so we went to JSON Schema. We started building out these JSON schemas and storing them as part of our projects, right? Then we moved to something a little more concise, YAML, right? Yet another markup language. This gave us a clearer, more succinct structure, less verbose, right? We have our data types on here of what we're doing. We're providing a description. We can provide also any other arbitrary properties that we want to be able to store and describe our models, right? And we would store these store these models again as part of our code in the repository. So I've told you, do your NoSQL data modeling in YAML, right? So what do you do next? Well, it depends on who you ask, right? Your project manager is going to say, oh, well, you're ready to start development. Let's get the project done. But developers, we oftentimes need data to work with, especially with greenfield applications. When you have a fresh domain, a fresh set of data models, you need something to work with, right? How many of you have wasted time writing code to generate some fake data and put it in your database system, no matter what it is, just so you can have something to actually start doing your project on, right? Everybody's done this at some point in time. It's a big waste of time when you're writing code to throw it away, right? That time could be better spent on development, further enhancements to your application, etc. And sometimes you might go in and manually create documents, right? So in here, we're manually creating a document. This is very time consuming. Even if you had 4 different models, you're going to spend 10, 15 minutes typing out this data just so that you can go back and retrieve something from Couchbase or really any database to begin your development, right? So there's fake data generators that are available out there. Some of you guys may have used these today, right? Faker.js, Chance.js, they're both NPM modules. JSON generator, Macaru, JSON Schema again. These are all great fake data generators. But even in NoSQL, we still have relationships, right? In Couchbase, we have relationships. All of our data is related, right? If we look at our example earlier, users can have orders can have line items are related to products. This is all related data. So relationships are hard. And we started to see this in our development, especially initially around with our mobile team. I was having to write a bunch of throwaway code to throw data through a sync gateway so our mobile developers could have data to pull down on their devices and begin doing all their testing. So we built a CLI tool called Fakeit. Fecat is very similar to Swagger, and if you've looked, even at the YAML model I showed you before, it's very, very similar to Swagger and what it can do. So we define our models in YAML, and what Fecat can do is generate JSON, CSON, YAML, CSV, and also it can export data to zip archives, to Couchbase, sync gateway, or just output it directly to the console that you could then pipe somewhere else and do whatever you want to do. And it's built using Faker.js and Chance.js are exposed, but you also have your own custom build functions, right? You can have multiple models and dependencies. And really what this means is you can generate one set of fake data and relate it to another set of fake data. So in the example that we have in our domain earlier, I can have users and generate real users and IDs, might even be UUIDs or randomized data, and associate that then to orders, and have orders have line items and products, etc. So to install Fecat through npm, we would use npm install Fecat -g. We take our original YAML model that we had before, and all we're doing on here is saying how do we want to generate our data, right? So I've removed the description, but all we've done is add a data attribute on here and a build function. So this is saying, in this case, return a first name and concatenated with a last name, or an internet username, or a password, right? They support template strings. So instead of going through a bunch of this anymore, it's just easier to show an example. So we have a basic model that's here that is users. And all I'm doing is saying Fakeit console, I want to output a user. Right? So I took this model we defined. Now I'm going to generate 2 or 3 or 4. Now from a single model, I can generate as many users as I want to. And in this case, I'm outputting them to the console. But we also have multiple different types of outputs that we can use here. So like file output, for example. I can say I want to generate all of this fake data, and I want to output it to a directory using JSON, and take that user's YAML file, and it's being output. Now we want to output CSON. Or, I'm sorry, YAML and then CSON. And now if we go look at this directory, we can see that we have all of these different files, static files that have been generated with randomized data now through a single file, right? So a lot of times what I've seen before is development teams will have a data set that's being generated, right? Like the travel sample data set or the beer sample data set or a music sample data set, whatever their domain or application may be. And they'll put it in a zip file, and that may be part of their repository. It may be some download link in an S3 bucket that when a developer starts up their development environment, they have to bring up Couchbase and do a CB doc loader, CB import all of this data on here. Well, we can represent that data through a tiny 1 or 2K file that's on here. Here's another additional output that is a CSV format. So even if you're using a relational system, you can have a model, a flattened model, that you can generate a CSV and then import into your relational system and use together. That's a function of it. I can say I've never actually used that. Only database that we work with primarily, or I work with, is Couchbase. Next, this is just another example here, and all these slides will be available. I'm just kind of going through a lot of them so we can really get to the meat and potatoes of what we want to show you. Is I'm generating 100 different documents here of JSON based on that single file, that user's YAML file that you guys can see here in the background. We iterate through all of those, and now we have 100 different JSON documents that were generated automatically on demand instead of storing all of those files separately. And I could take this zip file and I could import it into Couchbase directly, but it would be really nice if I could just stream all of this data from my console directly into Couchbase, which we've added support for here. We're able to take that same thing, now in this case just by specifying the count instead of generating maybe 1 to the console and 5 files or 100 to a zip archive, I'm streaming 1,000 user documents directly into Couchbase. Right? Now that is a data set that then I can work with to test out, maybe MapReduce with views, or test out my nickel indexes, or how do I do this query. Right? I'm able to quickly build, get data in there, change my model potentially, flush a bucket, regenerate all that data, and all this is being done through a single file. So with it being a CLI tool here, I think you can start to see how you can hook this into your CI/CD processes, whether it's something with QA or your development environments. And I'll talk a little bit more about how we use it, which is for mobile, right? Being able to send data directly through a CLI tool into Sync Gateway. How many people are doing mobile in here? Work with Sync Gateway? Okay, good. You guys will find this extremely useful, and I would encourage you to check it out. This is an example where we're just generating 100 of those same exact documents here and outputting them to a Sync Gateway that's running on my local machine. And so we'll pop over to the Sync Gateway as soon as all these documents get added in here. These are great demos, by the way, because they never break. So here in Sync Gateway, I'm just in the Sync Gateway admin. We're looking at all the documents that are being loaded here. So again, all of that was from a single file. I'm able to generate all of these. And how we do development, especially for mobile, we do a lot of hybrid development. Our developers don't need to know anything about Docker or Docker Compose or anything like that. We simply provide them two containers. We provide them a Couchbase container and a Sync Gateway container. And when those containers come up, it looks for their basically a data directory where we store all these models at. And at runtime, it takes whatever those models are, generates all that data for them, and now they can start testing from their mobile phones on the whatever the latest build is that they're testing with, and be able to get up and running without having to worry about data, right? A lot of mobile developers don't care about anything. They just want to know, I can get data and do something with it and respond accordingly. And this has really been able to allow that to happen. So in this case, I'm just going to add a channels property in here for the user. In Sync Gateway, we also have support for, so the first Sync Gateway example I should have said on there, we're illustrating that with without authentication enabled on it. We also support with authentication in there, so I just created a Sync Gateway user. So this is a base Sync Gateway install. You can see I get 3 documents in there. I created a CB Connect EU user. Now I'm going to hit the Sync Gateway directly in my web browser here, authenticate against it. So that is working. And now I would go, and that's not required, I'm just demoing that that user actually was created and it is working here. So what we'll do is go back to the console now. And again, we're just saying Fakeit Sync Gateway. Again, we haven't changed our model. I'm just sending it to a lot of different places. And in this case, we're sending it to the Sync Gateway 100. We're doing verbose logging, specifying the server, the username, and the password that we created with it. And just like before, it's going to read that model and output and flush all of that data right into Sync Gateway here. So how does Fakeit work? We try to make it really extensible for anybody that wanted to use it. Part of it was because, or how Fakeit came about was I was constantly having to write this throwaway code for developers to get fake data in there, right? And with my role and what I do as an applications architect, I don't always have time to just go write throwaway code and go write throwaway code, or oh, they want to change their model, or whatever the case may be. So in essence, you could say I'm lazy, right? I went and wrote a tool so then now it's their problem and not my problem. But I try to make it very extensible for these developers, right? They providing them several functions like pre-build or post-build or build, where they can provide a static value or use template strings. They can do things before a model runs or after a model runs. So in essence, what this looks like for you guys is you have a user's model, right? We defined it with the name there. It has all of our different properties, ID, doc type, user ID, username, etc. All these build functions are basically a JavaScript function that gets these arguments. Okay? And what this looks like is documents is basically an object that is all of the models that have been created and represented as an array. So in this case, we have documents.users that is an array of all the previously generated user documents. If I'm on a orders model, orders would be documents.orders, but it would have access now to all the previously generated data of the user's model in this case. We also have a couple other arguments that might be a little hard to read on the screen there. Global variables, you can assign globals. Inputs, we actually can provide input data in any format and make that available then to your models at runtime, because we can't always just use randomized data. You might have an existing categorization system that has specific IDs that your greenfield application needs to use those given IDs, whatever the case may be. We provide handles to Faker and Chance. You also get a document index, so how many documents you're doing. That's what we were using for the example earlier in the user's model, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, counting all the way up to however many we were generating. And how many people in here use Node? You guys will recognize it. You also get the require function. So you can actually require your own NPM modules or install other NPM modules that aren't supported just so you can generate your own data, maybe your own specific business rules, and we'll look at a couple of those examples. So in terms of a flow here, we start out a model, there's a pre-run function that gets called. So before we even generate any data, we can call a pre-run function. You might want to do some validation and say, hey, if this input wasn't provided, throw an error. or I need to look at the provided input and set a count. So I imported a countries file and I want to make sure, or a states file, CSV, I want to make sure that there's 50 in there or whatever, so the data hasn't changed. You can put in your own rules around there. Now we start building each of the documents. Before a model is generated, we call a pre-build function for that specific model. That document that's being generated will initialize the value to whatever data type that you may have specified. We'll call a pre-build function, so you can use a function to build your document or build a value as we go through each of the properties. Then we'll go back through each of the properties and call a build function. Then we go back through each of the properties one last time and do a post-build function. So a lot of times, at least for us, a standard practice is we always want to store the document ID that's in Couchbase as part of a property, right, in our JSON documents. So if I have a property that's user ID, that might be a UID, for example. Well, all it is that UID, but I want my document ID to be user underscore whatever that value is. Now by using a post build, right, I can generate my user ID on the build, then the next time through the entire document I can call post build and retrieve this dot whatever it is. So the context within inside of your models, if I jump back here, is this. The current document being generated is this. So this dot username or this dot user ID, right? Like you can see here on line 8 in the post build, we're simply returning user underscore concatenated with this dot user ID. So whatever we're using on the current run. So we give you context around what that is. Let's see if we can jump over to that. So my slides got out of sync here. We'll jump to here. So this is an example model of illustrating all the different pre-runs and how they work. So we're going to generate two different documents based off of a flow model. You can see we call pre-run, pre-build for the model, then we call pre-build for each property a build and pre-build and post-build and so on. And we finally get a document that's being generated, right? So being able to generate dynamic data from model is great, but there's very few applications we all get to work on where we have a single model in our domain, right? So we support multiple models. In this case, I've defined two different models that is just users and products. It's completely unrelated data, and we want to generate 20 of each of these specific documents in a JSON format, right? So now I've generated a product document, and I'm going to go in here and look at a user document. So again, two tiny files now. I'm just outputting the static, actual physical files, but I could stream these to Couchbase server or Sync Gateway or wherever we want. Models now, oftentimes when we're doing development, have dependencies. So dependencies, in this case, in our previous example, users have orders, orders have products, products can have reviews, right? We've created these different dependencies in here. And without going into what each one of these potential properties are, all I'm doing in my reviews model here is just saying that it depends on products YAML and users YAML. So when you go through and we're generating all of these models, we can say, I need to figure out my run order, right? Users doesn't have any dependencies, so I can start out running it first. And this is where I'll put the verbose argument on here so you can see what that looks like. So we can see we're running users, then we did products, right? And now we're generating orders and reviews. This is because they had dependencies on one another that the data inside of the orders model or the products model, or I'm sorry, the reviews model depended on existing data to be generated at runtime. So now we have a few thousand documents that are available to us and they're all being related. So we grabbed, in this case, user 366. We'll go back to this order and we'll grab a product ID here. that product ID is just a UID, it's not related to anything, and I know I keyed based off of product underscore whatever that ID is. So now I have truly related data and not just randomized data for each one of the models that we're wanting to deal with. So another example here would be you want to have all these dependencies, but you only want to actually output the data set of a given model. So in this case, we're outputting the orders model only. I referenced that directly in my CLI command, but you can see we generated users and products as part of that. But if we went and looked at Couchbase, where we outputted all this data to, only that model was output. So you have these different scenarios a lot of times when you're trying to generate data. You may need something for something else, but you don't just want this something else to be output. And just like Swagger, we support definitions, right? There's no sense in redefining this is how I want to generate a phone number within my domain or an address. So in this particular example, we have on the right-hand side there, you can see our definitions for a phone number and an address. And now I can re-include that multiple times by simply just referencing a schema that I've created. I know I'm going through some of this really quickly. I know we're limited on time, so I want to make sure we cover everything. If you want to see more of these examples in detail later, come find me. I'm more than happy to show you all this. We'll keep moving forward, though. Oftentimes, our models just cannot be 100% random, right? We have existing applications or existing data that we need to work with. Fakeit will allow you to specify inputs. This could be in a CSV file or a JSON file or a zip archive of JSON files. Any type of input. So you can see here we've built on to our user model by defining a person model. We have two external files, that's continents JSON and a country's CSV file. And all I'm doing here, and you can see on line 6 and 7, I'm referencing those particular files. So at runtime, we go find these files and inject them. And now I'm just referencing them here by saying return a random array element from the countries and use its country code. Or for the continent, right? Use inputs.continents, grab the random element from that particular array, and now I'm able to use this data from an existing file and just grab random values from it. So again, just verifying that that data is actually there. We saw it in the model being referenced. And now I'm saying just output it to the console and generate one person. And every time I run this now, I'm going to get randomized data, but also I'm grabbing true values that I know exist from within my particular domain. One thing here I alluded to earlier is with Faker.js and Chance.js and existing data, you might still have specific business rules that you need to apply at the time you're generating these models. And that's why we expose the require function. So this is an example here of, in my pre-run, I'm simply saying I want to import and require SHA-1 and assign it to a globals variable. I could reference this every single time if I wanted to. We're just putting it in the globals to illustrate this example. So here for our password, we have a plain text password that we're using. That's just so you can see it. And then after that password has been generated, we actually use a SHA-1 of that given password. So all I'm doing is using npm and saying install the SHA-1 module. And now I'm running or executing this against my users module. And you can see that we have our passwords and our SHA-1 being generated every time we run this, again, randomized data, which is great. How often when you have QA or something else you're wanting to deal with, especially from an automation standpoint in unit tests, that you need the same value over and over and over again, right? So we also support seeds, where you can take this same data set, same tiny little file, whether you're generating 1, 1,000, or 10,000, and recreate that same exact data set, but from a tiny file. So this goes back to our person model where we were importing the countries and the continents input files. So again, passing in external data, I'm going to run this, and you're seeing I'm getting randomized data here, right? It's different every time that I run it. But I'm going to specify a seed. A seed can be an integer or a string here. So our seed is connect. I'm going to sit here and I'm going to keep rerunning this, and you'll notice I'm getting the same exact data set every single time I run this. So now we can also create repeatable data and store these models as part of your code in your repository. So a lot of people just sometimes don't want to deal with the command line, don't want to deal with it. Fecat is exposed as an NPM module directly. You can write your own JavaScript to interact with the API, everything that you've seen around where do we output it to the counts, models, definitions, everything we can support fully through here. By sending in globs. The CLI tool actually supports globs as well, so you can just do like models asterisk. I don't know if you guys saw that on a lot of the different examples that we were going through. So all the same options are supported, whether you want what your seed is, whether you want logging, your formats that you can use, spacing, so you can actually change the spacing of the files. You know, we set the default to be 2 for these files. You could set it to be 0 and not have any spacing at all. You could have it be 4. It doesn't matter. What's your default limit or highlighting, servers. So while I specified it on a lot of the commands, when you're running these things locally, the default server is your local host and the default bucket is default. But you can go in and change those to whatever you want. Username and password. How many people have looked at the Couchbase 5 beta? Right? You don't mess around with oh, yeah, you guys in the back definitely have. Buckets don't have passwords anymore. You create users. And so that same thing we're already supporting in here with a username and a password, right? You can have a bucket without a password, but if your bucket does have a password, it's associated to a user. So now you need to specify a username and a password when you're authenticating. And the Nodejs SDK was updated, I think it was like a week or 2 ago, to 2.4.0, I want to say is the latest Nodejs SDK. So we've made changes for that to be able to handle Couchbase Server 5. So if you want to play with Couchbase Server 5 beta, generate Fecat models, send it a bunch of fake data, play around with it. Now I do want to restate that Fecat is for generating and testing out your models and nickel queries, whatever you want to do. It's not meant for generating vast amounts of large data sets, like millions and millions and millions of documents. Right? We'll run into memory issues on your local machine because we have to keep all these things in sync. If you want to do something like that, look at CB workload gen that comes with Couchbase. I have talked to a few people that have used Fecat to do that type of generation, but what they do is bring up a bunch of separate Docker container instances and do offsets of their data to get that vast amount of data inserted in there at that point in time. So again, how we use Fecat, we use our YAML models, we store them in our repository. We use a Docker Compose to provide the developers a Couchbase server, a sync gateway server, and at the time they bring it up, we've standardized all of our install commands and build commands and all that stuff around make. So they simply type make Docker up, make data, and all that goes in and generates all the data for them. They don't have to know anything, in this case, even about Couchbase or sync gateway or their model. They know what the models are because we've documented them with descriptions, but they don't need to know how it all ties together. They just know they run this command. They have a few thousand documents now that they can play around with syncing and authentication and things like that from their builds. They've been really, really handy. And we are looking at how our QA and testing teams can start leveraging this through automation and seeds of generating the same data sets, but again, from a tiny little file. So I think I have about 10 minutes left, a little less than that. Might hop over here and do one quick demo, again, just so you guys can see it, and I'll leave it open for questions. There is a bunch of examples out there for Fakeit. They're actually all used as part of our unit tests for the CLI tool that are available on GitHub, things like contacts or e-commerce. This flight data set will generate, I think it's about 250,000 documents. And I used that because I wanted to play with haversign queries and nickel to see what it was capable of. You know, being able to say this airport is within 100 kilometers, you know, what other airports are within 100 kilometers or 100 miles, whatever the case may be. A music data set, we have a social data set as well. So we have about 10 minutes left. I'll do a quick demo and then see if we have any questions that are there. So let me go back to mirroring. I'm going to log into a local Couchbase server using the super secret password of password. So we have some defaults in here, buckets. Let me go ahead and flush the e-commerce bucket, and we'll actually just do all three of these. So again, so we can show how we're generating random data. All right, so from the command line, I have all of my models. Can everybody see that? I can zoom in a little. Right, we have a directory called models, has orders, products, reviews, users. You can ignore the validation stuff. That's, again, because part of our unit tests. All I would say here is Fakeit Couchbase. You can specify the server and the bucket that we want to use. And we'll say we want to use verbose. And we just want to generate all of these models that are associated in there. So I'm going through and generating all my products, orders, all that stuff was output, again, to the e-commerce bucket. So if we jump back over here, we can see now e-commerce has 1,700 documents in there. I could up these numbers if I wanted to, just for demo purposes. It's a lot quicker. So now we'll use the testing bucket. Again, same, missed a space. Same models going to a completely different output destination. So if we were to look at what these look like here in Atom, and again, they are all available online, this is pretty much what you guys saw, right? Simply define the properties, the types that we wanted, the descriptions, and how do we want to generate this data set. Now we have something that is completely repeatable here. So our orders have dependencies. We can reference those dependencies. User ID. So I'm grabbing a random array element here from pre-existing users. We found this to be an extremely useful tool for us. Hopefully you guys do too. If you have any feedback, definitely create an issue on GitHub, let us know. Does anybody have any questions? I think we've got like 3 minutes left. Yes?
It's like a pretty good tool to unit test your Nodejs application.
Mm-hmm.
Have you tried using this with, does it work with the mock module that Couch provides?
With the mock module? That's what we actually use for our own unit tests for this CLI tool, is mock.
Because for your test, you're showing it working with the local server, but it does work with mock as well.
Yes, yeah, you can have as many multiple servers, and that's where from the CLI here, you give it one valid Couchbase server, and it'll send data there. It does not have to be locally on your machine.
At a point, if I'm using it within my Nodejs, for example, within my mocha test,
Mm-hmm.
currently we use the mock the Couchbase server,
Mm-hmm.
so we don't actually test against a local server.
Yes.
It's the mock module which comes with the Nodejs SDK.
Yes.
Does this work with the mock module?
So the question is, does this work in conjunction with the mock module from Couchbase? This is meant more for getting true data into Couchbase. We use the mock module, like I said, for unit testing of this particular tool, and I would encourage you to use both, right? Or, in this sense, if you're QA-ing something, you can generate a valid data set, or when you're beginning your development and you need data to actually work with and not just using mock, like you were saying, this is where this tool really comes in handy because you're able to see all of your data and how they're related and being able to generate that. Good question. Any other questions? Well, that's all that I have. If you do have questions later, feel free to get a hold of me, email me, aaron@shop.com, or on Twitter.